Unscripted, unshackled, uncouth.
What you're about to hear is for more mature audiences only.
It's Miguel and Holly, Uncensored.
I'm sitting here setting up the podcast, and Holly and producer Kelvin are having a whole podcast conversation. I'm like, wait, save it for the show, for you listening, wherever you're listening on the iHeartRadio app or iTunes. We appreciate you. Please leave us a 5-star rating. We'd greatly appreciate it. We also stream this live, so you can always catch the visual of it on the Miguel and Holly YouTube or the Miguel and Holly Facebook or Hits 961 Facebook page.
Yes.
Also, make sure to join our Miguel and Holly / Platypus Posse Facebook page. Say hi. We have some inside conversations there as well. So y'all were just talking about Ted Lasso.
Yes.
And Holly, you've been trying to like preach Ted Lasso for about a year or two now.
It's a year. I think we got on to it. Maybe it's just this year. When did the second season come out? Because we didn't watch the first season, but we watched the second season. Like we binged the first one and then we're like right on time for the second season. So whenever the second season came out, might have been earlier this year. I was like, oh my God, I love this show.
Wait a minute. Hold on. I got to restart you. Holly, I have to reboot you.
Reboot me.
Hold on. Oh my God. We used to say that all the time. All right, hold on. There we go. Holly has pushed the back of her neck and she has rebooted.
I have rebooted.
Yeah, how did you discover Ted Lasso?
Because when the second season was coming out, I saw so many people tweeting about how great it is. And it was enough people that I was like, all right, I like Jason Sudeikis. I'll give it a shot. And so I was like, well, second season, maybe let's just, we'll go through the first season real quick, and just fell in love with it. Fell in love with it. It's so good. And so Kelvin and I were talking about it because, Kelvin, you had said that you'd seen the first few episodes, and that like it wasn't like, you don't laugh out loud when you're watching it by yourself. And I was like, well, I don't really laugh out loud about it. I don't actually. And then I was like, let me back up. I don't really think it's a comedy where I'm like, ha ha, that was so funny. Like some other shows. To me, it's just more heartwarming.
My sister is obsessed. She's so obsessed. And you guys met her at the Pride Parade, actually. And she's trying to get me on the wave. And we watched a few episodes and she's just like laughing out loud. And I'm like, yeah, he's kind of dorky. It's cute. But I just didn't. I feel like a really good show has to catch me at that first or second episode. But then by the third, I'm like, okay, like it's cool. They're all playing soccer and they're all just trying to make it in the league or whatever it is. I don't really know much about sports. But I have to also acknowledge there is a huge following for that show. It's sweeping Emmys, so maybe I just have to wait until episode 5 or something. I want to give it a chance.
I don't know. I don't remember where it was that really hooked me, but I just like it just feels good. It feels good vibes to me. Like I feel my highest self when I'm watching it. I don't know, that sounds stupid, but like, well, I don't know. I don't remember laughing out loud.
Well, I feel like some shows like that, it's not, and I think that's why I always have a hard problem watching like comedies or lighthearted shows like that. Because there's not that like dramatic element that's sort of like, the whodunit or like, what's the mystery or like, what's the overarching enemy for the season,
right?
Or like, what are you getting to, where it's more so just like I think that's why like my husband Abe doesn't like the dramas that I like, the movies where nothing happens. And I can always feel him getting restless when it's like, a Meryl Streep movie and it's just like, very dynamic, deep acting with a great storyline. And he's like, is somebody gonna like scream at somebody? Is someone gonna shoot a gun? Is a car gonna go off a cliff? And I'm like, but no, the heart and the dialogue, and look at how Meryl Streep just becomes that person. And he's like, no, I don't see it. And I'm like, all right, well, let's just turn on fucking Fast and the Furious and call it a day.
Well.
My fiance Oscar and I, we do not have the same taste. Like sometimes we'll watch things together. Like I just got him hooked on Big Brother. we'll watch Handmaid's Tale, et cetera, et cetera. But last night we tried watching Halloween 20 because I told him, hey, like, even though it's not connected to the new trilogy that's out now, we should still watch it. I think it's a pretty solid movie in the
When's
Halloween
that?
franchise.
Was that from like
98?
Okay.
Oh, so you're going back.
You went way back. Because
Okay.
I was like, I think I saw that movie, but I think I saw it in high school. So, okay,
Yeah.
that was it then.
Yes. So I was like, oh, we should watch it. It's a good one. And he's like, I'll only watch it in the daytime. And we got to finish our chores and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, fine. I planned it out where like it would end on the sunset. We were 15 minutes in and he's like, I can't do this. I can't handle scary movies. I can't. And like, I wanted to be frustrated and mad about it, but I was like, poor thing. Like he can't handle it.
Yeah.
And he just wants to watch Gilmore Girls. And then I try to watch Gilmore Girls and I can't. It's so stale. No offense to anybody that likes it, but damn it.
I've never seen one single episode.
Oh
I don't
my
really get
God.
it.
They're so stale in the reactions. They're talking about how the daughter doesn't fit into the boyfriend's family, and the mom and dad are just like, or the mom and daughter are just bantering to each other in the most unemotional way. I didn't get it, but
I do know people that love it.
They love it.
Yeah, I always
I
thought
don't
that
really
was
get
a
it.
show that I should have liked back then. But
Did you watch it ever?
No, I didn't. I don't remember if maybe it came out like either like I missed the time when I would have enjoyed that type of show.
Yeah.
Because back in the day, I was a WB whore. Like, give me
Yeah.
all the WB shows, honey. I was
Yes.
in all of it. But for some reason, I missed the Gilmore Girls and I missed Seventh Heaven. I never watched those two shows. Those like totally bypassed me.
I saw some of Seventh Heaven. It was like something that I would watch in high school if nothing else was on. Like you could put it on and like nothing too complicated is happening. You don't have to really know the story.
I really liked Reba.
Oh, Reba,
A
you
single
like
mom
Reba.
that loves her kids. I loved Reba and I loved Grounded for Life.
Oh
Like
my
those are
God.
my like sitcoms.
I don't know why thinking of Kelvin sitting in Miami and watching
Reba.
It was so good after school. I loved it. I loved it.
I'm trying to see when did Gilmore Girls come out to see why I missed it. Let's see here. When did it start?
It's maybe after your time. It was after my time, I think.
No, it came out after your time because it came out October 5th, 2000. So, girl, you were in college already. You were.
I was in college. I was not about to go into Gilmore Girls. We were getting popcorn though and getting ready for the next episode of Dawson's Creek. That's what we were doing
That
because
was
it
a vibe,
started
right?
when I was in high school, and then when we went to college, everyone's like, "Does anybody watch Dawson's Creek?" Oh, you do? Okay, we're going to watch Dawson's Creek. So that was our thing in college.
Yeah, it started in October 5th, 2000 and went until 2007. So that was right when I was in high school, but for some reason I missed it. And it was on the WB. Oh, a show that I was going to also suggest that I just started watching yesterday.
Mhm.
And I think she does not get the flowers and the adoration that she deserves. Toni Collette, she is such a brilliant, versatile actress. And
Mm.
she becomes these characters and she's so good. And it just popped up on my recommended list on Netflix and it's called Pieces of Her.
Mm.
I'm only 3 episodes in, but I'm literally like, all right, I have like this long to-do list of places I have to go today. And I'm like, I just want to get home to like dive back into the story.
That's the best
Oh.
feeling.
It is when you're just like, I'm just ready to go home to
I
watch
got
it.
something good back home.
It says Pieces of Her follows the story of Andy, a 30-year-old woman who is caught in a deadly mass shooting at a local diner. Moments later, she witnesses her mother, Laura, violently eliminate the threat with ease. As Andy begins to unravel her mother's actions on that day, her perspective on the entire familial relationship takes a new turn. Soon, figures from her mother's past reappear, and she is forced to escape. On the journey, she attempts to find the truth that her mother buried long ago.
Oh man.
Lord.
I'm in it. It's Pieces
That's a
of
lot.
Her. I cannot wait.
It was a
But
little
Toni
heavy.
Collette plays the mother, and she's just so good in it. So good.
Okay.
Sounds heavy.
Yeah, it sure does.
Real heavy.
It is. I mean, the first episode with like there's a shooting in like the diner, and it's like, oh, like, and unfortunately, like that's the time we live in.
Yeah.
That like you do have to think about that. I mean, literally here in Charlotte, I was at the Concord Mall a couple weeks ago, and then literally the next week there was a shooting there. Like it wasn't a mass shooting, but it was a shooting there at that mall. And I was like, what would I have done? Like the store I was at, it just really makes you think about things when you go to public places. You know, like I remember after the Aurora shooting of the theater, and I remember always thinking like, well, let's make sure to get tickets by the exits and stuff like that, because you just like never know.
Yeah, that's what I do for movie theaters now. I always have to be at the end, don't want to be caught in the middle. But I've been in a situation like that. Thankfully, it wasn't a mass shooting, but you know, when there's so much hysteria and people are running and you have to hide, like I've been in a mall lockdown before.
Oh.
And I was at Carnival in Miami. And that one was wild.
What happened?
So in Carnival, I think there actually was a fight or some sort of weapon that was taken out, and that's what made everybody start running. And we were shooting something for a video package. I think I was doing for my personal YouTube. And my camera girl and I are just trying to run, and poor her, she has all the equipment. So I'm like, girl, give it to me. Like, let's go. And we hid behind not the fire trucks, the ambulances, just to make sure we were good, which we figured like, well, it's a good place to hide. And then for the mall, I was in Calvin Klein, and people started just running down the halls of all the other shops. And immediately they start closing down, like they have the cages or whatever, the gates. Yes. And my dumbass friend like literally peeks out and she's like, what's going on? And I'm like, bitch, I grab her by the hair, like, let's go. I didn't grab her by the hair, but I would have liked to. And then we go all the way to the back. And then of course the guy in the back who's in the fitting room has no idea what's going on. And he's like, you can't be here. The entrance is the other way. And I was like, sir, I'm going to be here right now. And he's like, no, you can't. And then finally he started getting the call in his ear. He's like, hey, we're closing down just for a second. We got to keep people safe, blah, blah, blah. And then I didn't know what to do. Like there obviously is an exit in the back part of, I guess the back part of where all the other products are in the back part. And
is it like an exit outside of to the mall or outside?
Yes. Okay. So it was like the back entrance to the store. And I was like, do I leave out of there? I didn't know what to do. So all we did was just wait, and we were all on the floor. There was a pregnant woman there who was obviously like a little hysterical, and it was just not a fun time. It ended up being a false alarm, thankfully, but not a fun time.
That's crazy.
But back to shows.
Scary.
No, well, but that's unfortunately the reality that we live in. That it's like stuff that you have to deal with and you have to always be cognizant about, because you just like never know. And that's one of the things in this show. In the first episode, they're just at this diner, and the mom, Toni Collette, can feel that like this guy is sitting there and like just something's not right with the way he's staring at this girl. And then the girl that he's staring at comes over and starts talking to Toni Collette and her daughter, and things start popping off, and you're just like, what would you do in that situation? Like, you want to say that you would like run and be able to get to a safe place, or do you just hide, or like what's the best protocol for those situations, especially depending upon where you are? It just really makes you think when you watch those sort of shows, and sort of put yourself in the place of that. Like, what do you do in that situation? Let's see here. Juicy Little Tidbit is here. Laura Top Life, Doe Eyes, Amy, Laura, Tony is here, and Anne Marie. And then we had Julia check in as well and say hello. Holly, are you okay?
Yeah, sorry. Now I'm just thinking about being shot. So thanks.
Sorry, girl.
You just like went away. I was like, are you here? Hello.
Nope, wasn't here.
It's not a fun time. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, no, it doesn't seem like it.
That's the world we live in.
What are you doing?
We got a message about the podcast.
Oh.
This is from last week. No, after Monday's podcast. This is from Lindsay Downing, who said, hey, I was listening to Monday's podcast and didn't know if you knew that there are 3 cities in Pennsylvania with naughty names, because we were talking about Cumming, Georgia.
Great transition. Yes. Thank you.
I was like,
Miguel.
wait a minute. There
I'm
was
feeling all
something.
type of ways. Like, wait a second. What are we even talking about right now? We're talking about being shot at. Now we're talking about different cities in Pennsylvania that have naughty names.
Yes.
I mean, y'all weren't responding to that conversation, so I got to pivot real fast. So here are the cities in Pennsylvania with naughty names. One city is called Intercourse.
Let me search that.
Okay.
There is one called Blue
We're not doing this
Ball,
again. We're not doing this again. We are not doing this again.
and then I'm reading her message. And then there is
Okay.
one called Climax.
Oh, good.
There is the village of Intercourse.
See?
Intercourse, Pennsylvania. Yes.
So thank you, Lindsay.
Good to know. Now we know.
Yeah.
All right. So
No.
what's going on in y'all lives today?
All right, reeling it back in. It looks like rain today. I don't know. Oh, you know why else I'm stressed, I think? I have to go see my mom today. And I think any day that I plan to go see my mom, I have high anxiety, but it's not conscious. And the only reason I even brought it into my conscious just now is because I'm trying to train myself to understand what I'm feeling and why. But I think I woke up this morning with extra anxiety, and it's because I got to go see my mom. Just really puts me on edge. It's very difficult. So I'm doing that after this. But once I get it done with, then I'm like, okay, and then I'll go see her again on the weekend. I'm trying to do twice a week. So it seems like maybe Wednesdays and a visit on the weekend is kind of how it's going.
Do you give yourself this might sound bad, but do you give yourself maybe some sort of time limit as to where you're there?
I do. I have to.
Yeah.
We discussed this because after it gets to be about an hour, I start coming apart. There's only I have my mind has about an hour to put on this show and be the right type of person that she needs that's going to keep it a calm visit.
Mhm.
And after about an hour, that starts breaking down and I start getting frustrated and snappy and mad, and then I'm like, this is not helping anybody. But that's also about the time when she starts, and when I start to be like, well, it's time to go, and then she puts me through the oh, well, you can only stay for 5 minutes, and then I'm like, oh, Lord. So yes, to answer your question, there is a time limit for sure, and so I'm gonna give myself about an hour, but I just get also nervous. And I was watching a good TikTok. Sorry, I'm just plugging in my light because it's fading as I'm doing this at the same time.
Your light never fades, Holly.
Well, it was just until now. Here it is. I saw this great TikTok, and I already knew this. Anger is a secondary emotion, right? There's something else going on underneath anger. But the TikTok I saw last night that was if you're feeling anger, there's fear underneath. And this man, whoever it was that was doing this presentation, seemed to make it out to be it's always fear. So if you're ever angry about something, ask yourself what you're scared about. And so I equated that to why I used to and still do get so angry with my mom. And so then I'm like, well, where's that fear? And I think there's just a lot of unhealed fear from even childhood of disappointing her or doing the wrong thing or not living up to what she thinks that I should be. It was just very enmeshed. So I think the reason I start to get angry is because deep down there's fear that's not being addressed too when I go. So I got to deal with that. And I'm just looking at the comments, and Laura Top Life said Xanax, and I'm like, I actually do have a prescription for that.
All right.
Yes. So I think I'm actually going to take some after we get done with this podcast, and that'll help me on my visit. And Anne Marie said not to get too personal. What does your therapist say? Well, that's why I spend an hour, because when you're dealing with somebody with a dementia, she doesn't have that diagnosis, but that's what it is in my mind anyway.
Mhm.
We've done role playing on how to best address it, because I do have that hidden childhood fear of when she starts getting, on me about something, even though she's not in her right mind, my inner child doesn't know that. And I'm trying to make it better immediately because that's what I was trained to do. So if she's I can't even, I'm trying to think of a good example. I don't know. If she's you need to go see if they're going to give us lunch now. the default in my body wants to literally get up and go check, because that's going to make her feel better in that moment. But that's actually, or the other default is to explain what I know, which is, I know it's coming in 15 minutes. No, listen. And then she wants to argue with me, and I then argue with her. Can't argue with a person with dementia, period. Does no good. So what the role play did was, like, if she's like, they're not going to serve us lunch today, instead of being like, yes, they are. They're not going to serve us lunch today. It should be here now. Oh, you know what, Mom? You're right. You're right. We are waiting an awfully long time for lunch, but I've spoke to someone about it and we're fixing it. Like lies. Like, you have to lie.
Right.
And since I don't really like that and I'm not very good at it, it doesn't come very naturally to me. So it's like this whole exercise in it's heavy work. Or she's like when I told you on the podcast the other day, like, they took down all my stuff. Oh, that must have been so frustrating. I'm going to make sure that they don't do that anymore. Instead of being like, nobody took your stuff down.
Did it. Yeah. Yeah.
That is so frustrating. Let's make sure they don't do that anymore. It's always just agreeing and diverting.
Isn't that sort of like what you do, like when Maya is really young and she's like asking you about stuff that, she's not old enough to know about yet, or you don't know, or it takes way too long, that you like come up with a sort of explanation that sort of soothes her in that moment. And then it's like, all right, her attention can divert really quickly to something else when she was really young.
Are you asking, what was the question?
Like, isn't it sort of like that same realm
sort
of
of similar
thinking?
Yeah. And weirdly, I have a hard time doing that with her now too. Like, I have a hard time with it because I was never told the truth as a child. Like, everything was very glossed over, and I feel like resentful now. Even as I got older, like, I would ask my mom questions and she just, I think based on her traumas, she would just either brush me off or not tell me the truth or whatever. So I have this thing where I really want to try to be honest with Maya. And so I get like conflicted about that. But when it's stuff that it's not of her age yet, like if she's too young for it, even now, I have a great analogy where I think I said this before, where it's like, okay, so that's too heavy for you. Much like I wouldn't ask you to carry the heaviest luggage on our trip. I'm going to give you the light one because that's appropriate. I can't tell you this full thing because it's too heavy for you. I'll tell you more when you get older and you can carry it. So that's kind of how I do that. But I still try to be honest with her. But it's that you can't do that with dementia. And so it's just it's retraining your brain.
And
that's
has
all.
she, like, have y'all started the process of like going through the diagnosis of like, that's the official, like, this is what she's dealing with yet? Or has that process started?
No, I don't know where we are. I'm so, I think I said this last time, but I just have needed a break for so long. Like, I'm so exhausted by the process from January until when we finally got her in the good place in August that I needed a minute. And then I can maybe dive back into like more doctors and more this and more that. But she's, I think, going to be seeing a new neurologist at the place she's at. And so I said, I'd like to be there at that visit so that I can talk with this person. So that should be coming up pretty soon.
Oh, that's good. And so do you go by yourself to visit her when you go?
It depends. It depends on if my person is able to come, because oftentimes he'll be like, let me make sure that I come so that I can be a support system for you. It'll also give your mom somebody else to bounce stuff off of. And he keeps the time. Usually, like when he comes, he'll be like at 45, he's like, well, look at the time.
Time to go.
So he's almost like the referee where he's like, and we're going to be shuffling out. So I really like the times that he can come to be that sort of go-between, because he's, less impacted by her stuff, even though it's impactful to him too. It's impactful to anybody.
Right.
I don't know if he's busy today or not. So if he can come, it'll be a better visit.
I think that should be easier said than done. And obviously I'm just saying shit because I don't know like your everyday schedule or in his everyday schedule, but that really I feel like that is so much better for your mental health as well.
Yeah.
Also considering his, I know I want to consider his as well, but I think that's really good for you to go with your partner.
As in a unified force.
Yeah.
You're 100% right. No, I totally agree.
Because
Yeah.
you'll be you'll be there for your person's difficult moments as well,
Yeah. And we do. And
life.
that's why and so I'm so thankful that he was there to help with all of the stuff that has transpired over this past year, because like there would be times and we would do podcasts in the summer and I would just be like breaking down. And I had a couple people that would be like, well, just remember, like, I know it's hard, but you're doing it right now. And I'm like, my response to that would be like, I don't want to fucking do it. Like, I don't want to be doing this, but you're right. I am doing it. And so like he was there to help because it was just so difficult just to keep your head above water. So like when he can come, he definitely does. So that's great.
It's good that he could be your rock. I feel like I try to be somewhat of a solid person for Oscar, just because he's that for me, 1000%. But I remember when his cousin passed away, and like I was a fucking wreck. Like I was a wreck for him, and like I know that he cried. I'm assuming a few times here and there, but probably not as much as me. And I just don't do well with like sad stories and death. I'm just not good at it.
Well, we all have different strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
We do.
Well,
and we know we know each other's. Like when you're in a partnership, you know each other's.
Absolutely. You know what you can lean on them for. And like, I know that if I'm going through something very, very emotional, I know that Abe is going to be like, I will sit with you. I will be a person for you. But I know that he's not going to be like, here is a comforting soliloquy of big words and soft things to say to you to make you. He's gonna be like, I'm there, I'm here. Do you want to go eat? You want me to make you a meal? Do you want me to go do something for you? He is a doer. If I'm like, hey, I need you to help me figure this, like when my grandmother passed away and he was like, what can I do? What can I physically get done for you and your family to help you out? That's where, he comes into play, where I'm the opposite, where I'm like, hi, let's have a conversation.
Yeah.
Lay your weariness on my shoulders and my bosom and let me help you out. Because I'll be in the thick of it with you.
Yeah, Miguel is good at like parsing things through and talking about all the things, which thankfully my person is too, because we have sat there and had like multiple deep conversations about like his stuff, my stuff. And so that we like kind of take turns on that. So I'm thankful for it, because it's hard going through all the deep stuff when you like someone's not in the weeds with you. You know what I mean?
It is. And Abe has like he's done a really great job of like learning how to dig deep and how to talk. Cause he's had a lot of stuff happen to him and his family that I've been like, all right, like I always know there's a certain time of year because of someone in his family that he lost that he'll literally like throw up the red flag and be like, oh wait, this is why I'm being short and why I don't feel well, because I know that this anniversary is coming up. And I'm like, all right, well, if you want to talk about it, I'm here. We don't have to, but there is a time and a place and you should deal with that and talk about it,
Yeah. No, I agree.
But I feel like for so long, because when he lost this person in his life, and he'll be honest with you, and he's told this to multiple people, so I'm not, saying his business, but like he was young and he just turned to anger. And I feel like you said, Holly, that is the easiest, like you have that hurt and that pain. And then there was just, well, I'm just going to be angry. Yeah. And he's always said, he's like, if you knew me during that time, we would not be together, because he was just a terror. He was just going around. He just didn't know how to process and deal with it, but he's gotten better at it. But whenever those situations do come up, I'm like, let's talk about it. But I do have to say to him, I've learned this in our relationship, that I have to be like, all right, is this you want me to like shut the fuck up and just be here and listen? Or is this where you want me to respond and like help you with the situation?
Yeah, I'm getting better at understanding too, because oftentimes I will get on a here's what I think soapbox, like try to help figure out the problem. I'm like, well, this is what I'm feeling, and this is what it seems like is the issue, and I'm using my armchair psychology skills. Sometimes a person just wants you to just sit and listen, and I'm trying to get better about that.
My person's a robot.
Wow.
Personally, I think he is so secure with how he feels that it never no, I'm not going to say never, but most of the times whenever he is going through something, he's just able to deal with it, I think, at that time as it happens. And that obviously took some conditioning, probably with his previous relationship, is what I'm going to assume, as to why he's so secure in knowing how he feels and how to deal with it and how to communicate about it.
That's
So I
good.
kind of benefit from that. I really do.
I was going to say, you reap the benefits of all the work.
Yes.
That's great.
Yes, I do.
Yeah,
Great.
that was one of the things that I felt great during my therapy appointment a few weeks ago, is we were just sort of going over things from my childhood and like growing up and just how I processed it and how I dealt with it.
Oh, that's so great.
But he was like, you've actually done very good for like what you've been through and how you've handled it and how you've like thought about it. And as I talked through a couple of situations and been like, well, this is what happened. This is what I thought then. And then this is how, it sort of affected me now.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, he's like, I'm actually very impressed with like how you did it. And I was like, oh my God, all those times that I spent by myself, just literally sitting in a fucking chair, writing in my journals and being like, so this is what I think. And this is da. And he was like, no, you've done a great job at being able to process and like understanding when things happen to you, what that means and the implications of it. So that was very validating for me to be like, am I just totally like a psychopath and like just not feel like I'm just here? I don't know. Like, I don't know. Tell me, am I crazy? So that's been really cool. Now we're like working through some other stuff that's really interesting. I always feel bad because Abe has to leave the house because it's, through Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, I feel like whenever Abe gets back home, he's like, are you okay?
How'd it go?
Are we okay?
How'd it go?
Is everything fine? I'm like, everything's fine.
Why does Oscar get like that too?
Because I feel like, if Abe started therapy and he was like, hey, can I have the house for an hour? And I had to leave. Of course, I'd be like, all right, so what happened that week? Did I piss him off? Like, did something happen? Is he talking about it? And then you're like, am I walking into a minefield? Are you okay? Like, what's going on?
Yeah. We have this conversation every time I have therapy and every time my person has therapy, and he has it weekly. So like, actually he texted me a little bit, like just 5 minutes before we started this podcast. And he's like, I just had a great visit with my therapist. Call me when you can. And I was like, oh, thank God.
Noted. Okay.
About it, but I'm about to do the podcast. Or like sometimes like I don't hear and I know it's a visit day. And so I'll check in like half an hour after I know it ended. And I'm like, how'd it go? And he'll just be like, it's a little heavy today. And I'm like, okay.
Oh my gosh.
Like we always check in, and he's always like, do you need some time afterward? I want to talk about it. And I'm like, not right now, or whatever. It just depends on how the session goes that time.
I always tell Oscar, I'm like, hey, I talked about you today. And like,
yeah,
this
same.
Is what we need
I'm
to
like,
work
well,
on,
it was about you.
or this and that. But yeah, I never even thought about that. The partner's I guess hesitation or worry.
Perspective, yeah.
Yeah. All that.
Oh, that was another thing that my therapist, and Holly, thank you for the therapy journal, because now I'm like writing notes down about like when I visit so I can remember stuff like this. That one of the things that he said that I do well is that I put myself into other people's shoes really well. And that I really, really, really try to be empathetic when that sometimes isn't what I naturally want to do. But because of my upbringing, I always force myself to think about the other person and to go, well, what would they think if they were in this situation? And so with like Abe, I'm always thinking of like, if I'm like, even when I just told that about his life and his family, I was like, all right, if he's listening to this traveling, how is that going to hit him? Is he going to feel like offend, and that all happens in like a couple of seconds in your brain. But I was like, oh, yay. So it's like these little affirming little check marks and then these little things that I have to work on. And that's one of the things that we're working on with the therapist is communication and planning for the future and like putting it on paper about what we want and things like that. So it's been really fascinating.
That's good.
Anybody have anything else before we get up out of here?
What's the podcast title? Therapy.
We're all over the place.
Any suggestions for the podcast title? You watching on Facebook?
Therapy
on YouTube?
More naughty cities that Holly doesn't want.
Intercourse, Pennsylvania.
No, we're not. We're not doing that. No, we're not.
What if you had to travel there? You would have to be there.
No, you wouldn't.
Little
no.
family reunion.
What if you had to go to Blue Ball, Pennsylvania?
You had to give us one. Give us one.
What if you had family there and they called you and they're like, when are you coming to intercourse?
And there's the show, ladies and gentlemen.
Miguel and Holly Uncensored.
Catch it on the iHeartRadio app or anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Oh, God.